This is Jackie with Idea Citizen. You're in for a treat today. I'm speaking with Kathy Zapula. We're having a very lively conversation around the future of work. There's good nuggets of information all the way until the end.
I was in corporate for 30 years. I did my time. I wanted to be more present to raise my kids, but not give up my career necessarily, and had aspired towards entrepreneurship my whole life. Just never thought that it was reachable. And, I just decided to take the plunge. And there are things that are super comforting about being in corporate at a 9 to 5 with a steady paycheck and benefits, and especially if you're working for a really good company. But I think you reach a point in your life where it's nice to make your own rules, to report to no one, to manage no one.
I feel like it's all super confusing right now. There's some public leaders that are, I don't know, the sense I get like they're angry. They're angry that people are like angry about return to office 5 days a week.
Yeah. Well, I feel like, I feel like I don't feel like people trust their employers anymore. And there was a report that was just released, the 2025 Element Trust Report, and it talks a lot about people globally, not just in the United States, and their level of trust with government institutions, with health organizations, and with kind of major entities that we rely on a day-to-day basis. And trust is generally low across the board. It's highest for businesses, meaning our trust of corporations, but it's still low. So it's kind of deceptive because it's the least low of the different organizations. And it's kind of old school, but listen, my dad, he worked for IBM for 35 years and he was asked to retire early. It was his whole life. It was his whole identity. And even though we had a great run, they moved us to Paris. We lived in France for 10 years. They put my dad through college, the first person in his family to attend college. And, it just still, though, for him as an Italian Catholic man, it was his whole life. And so being asked to retire early was embarrassing. It was confusing. And he really didn't know what to do with his life afterwards. And sadly, he died at the age of 70, certainly prematurely, what I believe was of a broken heart. He was very lost after he left IBM. And, that was kind of the start of the 1990s of the disconnect beginning between employer and employee, and the trust starting to erode. Pensions started going away, layoffs became, predictably predictable. And now you fast forward to 2025 and you look at a 1 year stint at a company is not even considered job hopping anymore. That is considered
That's so confusing to
more than
me. I'm like, really?
pre-COVID at a recruiting agency. If someone had less than at least 2 years, ideally 3 years of experience, you didn't even want to touch them. So fast forward to 2025, even just from 2019 and 2020, and that's okay. Obviously they need to have good reasoning and a good story. But the point is the relationship between employers and employees and vice versa, employees and employers, has really eroded to the point that it's a transactional relationship now. So
Yeah.
to try and pull the bait and switch with people where you're telling them it's okay to do something that's really impacted their life, maybe affected their childcare decisions, maybe affected their real estate decisions, and now all of a sudden kind of switch the playbook on them is just not fair. And people don't like being treated unfairly, right?
Yeah.
So I think that I have clients who have been in office the whole time, 5 days a week, and that is part of their value system. They've been very consistent. It's not for everybody, but it is for some people. Some people like being in the office 5 days a week.
Absolutely.
So for those companies, their story has been very consistent. It's part of their value system. If a company's been hybrid or remote or flex for 5 years, and then they try to, it's just not going to work. It's not going to work.
No, it's absolutely confusing, and I think it's completely reasonable and fair for any employer to say like, hey, this is how we do it, and I think it's most disruptive when it's like when it's changing, or say somebody's hired during a time where it was flex or remote or whatnot, and now going back to say like a uh an old way or how it was previously done. It's challenging. I mean, then we're at an impasse here, unfortunately.
There's definitely a RTO trend, return to office trend. It's not just with Meta and Amazon, it's happening with other companies as well. I think the challenge is you can mandate something, but what's actually happening? Is your best talent coming in 5 days a week? Well, probably not. And if they're not coming in 5 days a week, what does that say to the rest of the team? Are people just swiping and leaving? You can't mandate something and then not enforce it. Well, once you enforce it, you're going to enforce it on your talent. Well, then you risk losing your top talent. So it's just an untenable situation. And I don't think that even the biggest and brightest companies have all the answers. I don't think, JP Morgan is such an admirable institution. And honestly, Jamie Dimon is a legendary, CEO, for a lot of really great reasons. But I just don't think, especially with the younger generations, especially with millennials and Gen Z, mandating anything is so tone deaf to entire generations that it's just remarkable to me. The kind of I walked in the snow and walked 80 hours, worked 80 hours a week, 7 days a week, my whole life. That does not resonate with Gen Z and millennials.
Well, and let me ask you to it, like specifically for Gen Z people. I mean, I do think that there is like a narrative for coming back to the office in some capacity, partly because one, you're at a period of your life where you're likely like you have, in theory, limited responsibilities outside of work. I don't want to marginalize what, people's experiences are. Like there's a whole slew of different things. But like if there is a time to
Right.
come
They might
back
not
into the
have four
office and
kids
like,
and two daughters.
yeah, and like learn things and like make those connections and mentorships, and in my opinion it's like it is very much in your earlier career. And I think that there's a balance for flexibility for leadership and otherwise. Like I one of the things I struggle with is like from like leadership, please don't ask something you're not willing to do yourself. I'm like, if you're doing it yourself, then I think we have like a completely reasonable and fair conversation, but do not ask something of people that you're not willing to do yourself. That to me comes off the most tone deaf out of it all. Granted, in all fairness, I also do think leadership has like there are responsibilities outside of your regular working hours. So there's that as well, and those things to consider. But um I don't know, it gets a little dicey.
I think employees know when leaders are really working, whether they're physically in the office or on a plane or on a meeting. People are bright. They know when a leader is leading and when a leader is off on the golf course. They really know the difference. And I think, and I walk the very fine line of traditionalist and forward thinking. I look ahead because I'm sorry, whether we like it or not, that's where we're going. And we're going there very fast, very fast, very fast. However, I managed hundreds of people across my career. I was a traditionalist. I was someone who kind of had the Jamie Dimon mentality 5 years ago, to be honest. But what I'm realizing is the people who want to be in office who are in their 20s, which is the right decision. I mean, how can you build a career remotely?
It's a yes and it's like yes you can and like consider these things.
I mean, that there's some element of being, interacting and really learning how to talk to people live. And, we're going to differentiate ourselves from AI by the human element of who we are. So if you can't
Yeah.
hold a conversation, pick up the phone, lead a meeting effectively in person, these are what we need the skills we need to hone in order to separate ourselves from AI. But I think the difference is, before it was, if you look at the center of everything, it was the company, right? And everything, the company you worked for. And that was the priority. In my dad's case, let's say it was IBM. And everything else
Yeah.
kind of came around it. The white fence, the picket fence, the house, the summer vacations,
Yeah.
everything kind of family, hobbies, everything kind of was around that main center circle. Your life revolved around the company. And now I think where we are, especially with millennials and Gen Z, and hopefully with as many Gen Xers as I can convert, where now that circle is me. I'm the circle.
Mm.
And so, community, family, side hustle, spirituality, learning and growth, wellness, mental health. So now and then the company is there, but the company is competing with so many other things of equal importance to the person. And I think so that's why people in their 20s want to go in, because they recognize I'm the priority and I see this as an advantage to me. They're not going in the company to do right by the company. They're going, or because they're loyalists or they're trying to follow the rules. They're going in because they're smart enough to see this is best for me, and that's wrong or right. That's where we are.
I mean, hey, if you have a company and organization that's built in a culture and, say like a structure or whatever that in fact like taps into those triggers and those motivations. Because I mean, where I was getting at to, or in my head where I was getting to with some of these conversations is like, or at least the start of our conversations, what is what is the employee's role and what is the employer's role? And it, to what you're exactly saying, it's like we're having a different conversation today where it's like, as an employer, it's like, how do I make sure that you see all these opportunities and advantages that this is going to make for you? And then for the employee, whatever stage they are in their life and everything, to take advantage, like, hey, yes, I want to be on that path, or hey, yes, I want to, I don't know, build out whatever network. I think that that's strength and culture, I think, for an organization to build that out. I mean, let me ask you this real quick. So, I do have a couple like rapid fire misconceptions about the future of work. So, what's your take on the idea that everyone will lose their jobs to AI and automation?
Okay, so there's short term, medium term, and long term. So in the short term, let's say the short term is the next 5 years. Not everyone is going to lose their jobs to AI, but anything that is transactional work, information based work, you think of accounting, you think of administrative assistants, you think of food service workers. Anything that can be automated or information that can be provided easily, those jobs will be impacted. Now, whether companies reskill those people into other roles or those people are lost is that's a whole other conversation. And there are ways that you need to future proof your career regardless of what your job is or what your field is. The medium term, yes, there's going to be a lot of change. The motto for a company is faster, better, cheaper. Faster, better, cheaper. They want to do
Yep.
things faster. They want to improve the quality, and they want to do it for the least amount of money so they can make the most amount of profit and be as competitive as possible in the market. So if they can do something faster, better, cheaper, they will. I guarantee you, they are not a charity.
Yeah.
They are not a nonprofit. We're talking about for-profit companies. So many people will be impacted because AI is going to allow them to do a lot of things faster, better, cheaper. If you look at startups, no longer will it be a startup with a huge team that they're hiring. Startups can launch companies with 1 to 2 to 3 people and automate the rest of the business to scale for growth. So the idea of the startup is even going to change. So medium term, virtually everyone will be impacted. And that's, I would say, 5 to 15 years from now.
Okay.
Beyond that, Bill Gates was just on one of the nightly on Jimmy Fallon, and Bill Gates, just without a care in the world, said, yes, humans will no longer be needed. Will we have robots play baseball? Probably not. We want to watch humans play baseball, but humans will not be needed to do work. And so that's another whole conversation about universal basic income and how the whole
Yeah.
economic structure is going to change. In our lifetime, this will happen, but not in the next 5 years.
It's my head goes to a little bit of a dark place with some of this because I mean, let's be honest, like as Americans here, we benefit greatly from labor in China. And it's like
Yeah.
the cost of goods that we're currently experiencing, like I think there is an automation component that will kind of allow for, but I think right now it's on the backs of people. Like that's the reality. Like, that's how like some of this stuff happens in very unreasonable like working payment whatever conditions, and I think it's problematic. So if the solution is machine, great, but then there's like larger questions as to
What do those people do who
machines.
need to earn an income? Right,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
how do
it's
they
all
how do
that
they
stuff.
feel?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's daunting, to be honest. And you even think about, the idea of globalization. I talk to people in Germany, Bangladesh, all over the world on a regular basis. Access to talent is as easy as it could possibly be. So that means it's easy for companies to access talent all over the world. And in some case, that talent is a lot less expensive. And now anyone in any country that has a computer and has access to the internet can earn an education. You do not need a college degree. You can get skilled in lots of different things online, whether it's through AI learning, whether it's through Khan Academy, whether it's through Coursera. Everyone has a college at their fingertips in the most remote places of the world. So you start thinking about what is my competitive advantage when there are thousands of people who can do what I do for far less money than what I charge to do it. So I try, it's hard because I don't want to be alarmist and I don't want to make people feel like I'm sending a message that's just like too much, like I can't process. But on the other hand, if we don't talk about it, if I help some amount of people get ready for what's coming, then I sleep peacefully at night. So, that's my mission, and I don't want to turn people off, but a lot is changing. It's
And
just
I'm going to come
reality.
back to a little bit of that because I do have a question a little bit more into AI and automation. And what you just said actually spoke to that, but I'll come back to that. So another one, of rapid fire. Are career paths still going to be linear, or will we see nonlinear career trajectories?
No, and this, if I can give one piece of advice to anyone who listens to this podcast, is diversifying your career strategy is the number one thing you need to do. So, would I go back to corporate someday? Absolutely, if the right opportunity presented itself and it made sense for that stage in my life, just as you're open to the idea of going back to a more traditional environment. But I would have to guess that you're unwilling to give up the work you've built on the as an entrepreneur and a solopreneur, whether it's the podcasting, whether it's the Idea Citizen Group, you've created value in ways that you likely can. And I very much hope you continue to create, even if you do go back to a corporate environment. And so that would be
Oh,
my
thank you.
negotiation. Yeah, with a corporate environment is, listen, I'm doing some things on the side that are important to me. I think I can weave them into what I'm doing for you at the
Yes,
corporation to really
yes.
help you and elevate the organization. But I'm not going to sacrifice this because this is now it's not a side hustle, it's part of my career strategy. And so I think that's the thing. I don't tell people leave corporate. What I tell people is you better be able to drive income on your own, because we're just looking at a very uncertain future, and you need to understand what are your gifts, what are your capabilities, what set you apart from others, how could you generate income if you had to outside of a corporate environment, and start working on that plan now. Because to have that linear career path or one company mindset, listen, some people are lucky. I have a friend who's been at Allstate for 25 years. She'll retire with a pension, and that still exists, but it is very rare,
Yeah,
very rare,
yeah.
you know.
Well, my husband works for the government, and normally that was
Well,
previously very stable. So, like, who knows what's going to happen now?
you cannot assume anything, right? Because, right, who would guess that a government job, it's the antithesis of what anyone thinks when you say government job. You think security,
Yeah.
right, pension, retire early. You think all those great things about paying your dues so that you can, have a life after
And
government. And
ultimately the trade-off too there too is like generally like a little bit lower salaries for like kind of that like the trade-off,
exactly.
like because if you go from public to private sector, it's like
Yeah.
you're getting very different salaries. So
Yeah.
wait, so
There's no,
let me ask you this.
I don't care if someone's been at a company for 25 years. I see it all the time. The guy at JP Morgan, I've been here for 25 years. If anyone today is sitting at their desk and saying their job is not at risk, they have their head in the sand and they are extremely naive.
Yeah, yeah, I'm tracking with you. So let me ask you this, Kathy. Like, are you kind of speaking or like teasing out a gig economy? Like, are we talking gigs? Like, are we still talking like corporate? Do you have, is there a distinction between them?
It's going to become more fluid over time. I think companies are going to be hiring people based on projects, so skills-based hiring, project-based hiring. So I think that relationship will continue to become more and more transactional, where there are more free agents who sell their time rather than committing to a full-time opportunity with a company.
Hmm.
I don't know how that plays out from a benefits perspective, because a lot of reason people are dependent on the government or for corporations or with corporations is because of benefits. So that's kind of in our country a tricky situation. But I think that, again, having some sort of strategy where you really understand what separates you from the pack, what makes you unique, and finding out how to monetize that aspect of what you have to offer is critical, simultaneous to continuing your corporate career track, if that's what you choose. It's not a side hustle per se. You could have 5 side hustles, but it's more, okay, can I turn the side hustle into something more predictable if I have to? Could I turn the side hustle into something more predictable if I decide I want to? Instead of it just being a side hustle that might have a beginning, might have an end, kind of is almost a hobby.
Yeah.
The other thing is AI. I'm shocked at how few people are understanding the impact
D-
of AI
Ding
in
ding.
in 24 in less than 24 months. super intelligence will exist. AI will be more capable than any human on this earth. You have to use logic to think about, it's like the faster, better, cheaper thing. Use logic. If we are going to have systems that are smarter than people, the NVIDIA founder just showed a mini computer that can work through something like 70 trillion pieces of information in less than a second. In less than a
Oh my
second.
goodness. Oh my goodness.
So we have to use logic and say those who lean into AI, those who embrace it, not just at work, in life, plan my itinerary for my trip this weekend,
Hmm.
build me a retirement plan, learning how to use AI to make them better at their lives, at what they do, at their talents, at their work. Those are the people that are going to survive the next phase. If you're sitting back, if you're a tax accountant and you're like, do, 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 just doing your thing, AI, blah, 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 I don't need it. You will not be sitting in your job 5 years from now. You just won't. You just won't.
I agree.
So it's a choice.
I absolutely agree. Yeah, absolutely. So then, I mean, you've kind of teased this out a little bit, but like, how do you see, like, I mean, aside from like adopting it in some capacity, but like very, very, like from a very real standpoint, like, how do you see AI and automation reshaping roles across different industries? How have you already seen AI reshaping kind of your, when you've done recruitment? Like, what does that look like today versus 3 years ago?
Well, and I'll even talk about marketing because marketing is going to be so deeply impacted as well. I am a solopreneur. I'm working on my own website. I produce my own content. I design my own posts. I use Canva for 120 bucks a
Same, love
year
it.
and
Love it.
love it. And so I don't need to hire a graphic designer. I don't need to hire a web developer. I don't need to. And now I'm just one person. So if you think about a business having then these capabilities, you then see marketing teams shrink. So then you say, okay, who are the ones who will survive? If you look at recruiting and the fact that recruiting is becoming so automated, who are the ones that will survive? And again, not survive 20 years from now because we can't even predict what things will look like 20 years from now. But for the next 5 to 10 years, it's all going to be again about that human element, the relationship. So let's say I've known a web designer my whole life and they know me and they know how to capture exactly what I want and where I'm going. I can't do that. I'm going to do an inferior website. I'll do a website, it'll be
Yeah,
fine, but it won't
get
be
it
the
done.
best. I'm not the expert. So that web designer needs to have relationships, people who know them, people who rely on them, people that they talk to even when that person doesn't have any web work that needs to be done. People who know, that web designer knows that person's dog's name and their kid's name. And that web designer sends a message every quarter saying, "Hey, I think you need an update on your website. I'm happy to do it. Let me
Yes,
know."
yes, yes.
That kind of, whether you're inside a corporation or you're a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, freelance, whatever it is, really embracing the human element, which is relationships, the people to people interactions. That's what's going to separate you from the transactional web designer who's just doing it, spitting it out, sending it to a person, and then not actually building the relationship with that person.
What I'm getting from that is ultimately the difference between being a passive workforce versus an active workforce or, just an active employee or whatever, solopreneur, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it. But it's like if
Yeah.
you're waiting for somebody to come to you for something, for a design or whatever, they're probably then going to potentially house that out to like a Canva. But if you're like, hey, I think you guys actually like, if I'm bringing value and I'm bringing like, hey, this is actually what I recommend in terms of like driving some strategy and everything and have those relationships, I think that like that's like that's an awesome balance. And it's because to your point, like with designers, it's like you're not just a designer, you're like a strategist at the end of the day. You're strategically aligning with like whatever the business's goals and aspirations are. But it's like if you leverage somebody with that expertise, they're like, hey, do you know that this is now available? This is what let's say Facebook is really prioritizing XYZ. I can make this for you. Let me do it. And I think that's leveraging these tools,
Proactive.
but then like you as an individual, like knowing kind of all these insights and what's actually needed and what the conversation is culturally.
Yeah, 100%. Well, and the same goes for managers. The whole management, what so many aspired to reach was the management level, right? Of course, a lot of people aspire to the C-suite, and becoming an executive. But that's harder. There are fewer positions, but everyone kind of goes into the workforce and aspires to become a manager. That whole manager layer is going to disappear. And that my newsletter this week actually on LinkedIn is about that management layer disappearing. What will still exist are leaders. So if you're a manager and all you're doing is making sure the reports get in on time, making sure the information is correct, making sure your team shows up, making sure, you're checking the boxes, your position will be eliminated. If you are a leader, if you are out in the market meeting talent, recruiting talent into the organization, if you are a coach and you are helping people cross train, and if you're a change manager, all this change is happening. People hate change. So think about how great really good change managers will do. If you're a leader who's a really good change manager, these are the things that the company will find are valuable because they're unique
Yes.
to you. If you are just doing something a bot can do, those are the people that will fall behind, unfortunately.
I once had like one boss say something. He was like, Jackie, he's like, you know what? He's like, you're kind of something about being interesting or whatever. He's like, I'm normally used to kind of getting people going and everything. He's like, For you, I have to pull you back. So to your point, you're like, no, 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 like leaders are going. They're going and they're forging ahead.
Yes,
And it's like, if anything,
yes,
yeah, you have to pull them back a little bit, but like, isn't that
yes,
such a better place to be in than like to like or like get somebody to like, get them like moving and stuff? You're like, no, no, no. Like come to me with
yes.
like a bunch of ideas and let me tell you no to something, but like go. Like light that fire.
Well, that's why you have to use your instincts and you have to be true to who you are as an individual, because no company is going to sit you down in the next 24 months and say, let me tell you what's happening in the future. Let me tell you about what this company is going to look like 5 years from now. Let me tell you what you need to do to cross train and what you should do to protect your job. It's
No.
all
Yeah.
going to be because companies also, they're trying to figure it out as they go in some cases. And so many people are dependent on their company to tell them if they're not
Yes.
doing well, what they need to learn, what's on the horizon, how their job might change. And what I'm telling people is do not wait for anybody to tell you anything. You just have to look at what's happening and use logic, understand who you are, your true self, your true gifts, and start
Excellent
really
counsel.
investing in that and leaning in to what's ahead rather than waiting for someone to tell you, oh, I don't have to use Chat GPT because no one forces me to do it at work.
You better start
I
using
mean,
it.
I can't. I can't save you if that's the mentality. It's not like the internet and you're like, oh, I'll get to it someday when I get to it. Like you can't be a late. And I was a late adopter to your point about, being told to, maybe to pull back a little bit. We find that I wasn't this person. I was the person who was the last person to get the cell phone, the last person to get the BlackBerry, the last person to really dive into the internet. I mean, sadly and embarrassingly so. That's just
But you're
I
here
was
now,
old
so
school,
whatever.
I was old school. But that's how urgent this is I recognized how rapidly things are changing in this perfect storm of generations and societal changes, political changes, globalization, virtual workforces, distributed work, AI, automation. It's literally kind of a perfect storm of change, which is why I became so passionate about this and want to help people because if anyone, I can understand other late adopters, and I'm trying to shake them and say, you cannot be a late adopter this
Yeah,
time. You
and you
can't.
don't have to be. Absolutely. Well, let me ask you this.
No, it's easy.
Okay, I mean, literally, this is like AI and the workforce and everything. It's like barreling down the street like a 2-ton truck or whatever.
Yeah.
The ethics around this all, like, what are we doing there? Because that part, I have big question marks. What are we doing? Like, I mean, do we
You
tell
know,
people that they're chatting with a bot? We make people assume that they're actually chatting with people? Like, what information's being stored? What information's being uploaded into like these various different AI tools? Like, we're I feel like it's
you
a
know,
little bit of the wild, wild west here.
it's 100% the wild, wild west. One of my first newsletters was Who's Really Running the World? We think politicians are running the world, but in fact, there's the tech titans. There's 7 of them who are truly running the world, and they're unelected. and it's not, everyone can focus on Elon Musk. Elon Musk is just one piece of the pie. It's just the reality is AI is going to control the future, and whoever controls AI is going to control the future. So, some people see it as there's utopia. Oh my God, we get to work less. Maybe we only work 2, 3 days a week. There's this universal basic income, so everyone can kind of survive and be, paid enough money to live. And then there's the dystopia, which is it's going to get crazy. The capabilities will get in the hands of bad people. It is the Wild West. Who can survive on universal basic income? There's very clearly, and they actually call this, there are some people who call this the hinge century,
Tell me.
meaning
What?
how we answer what you just asked will dictate whether or not humanity continues beyond the century. And that's dark
Okay.
and that's deep,
Yeah. I mean, it's a
but
good
it's true.
question.
It's true. It's
Yeah.
a good question, right? So, in 100 years, uh, are there people living on Mars and we've figured this thing out and we have order, world order, and, we figured out how to use this for the better? Let's hope, but it is humans that have to make sure we put the systems in place to allow for world order. And it's a little, it's scary. I have 2 kids. So um, and to your point, just about ethics and all of that, I just had a conversation this morning with the principal of the school. And I was like, listen, I write about the future of work. I am a huge proponent of AI. I'm encouraging my kids to use it constantly, but
Yeah.
I need to know from you. You tell me, I don't want my kids getting in trouble for cheating. I need to make sure that I'm giving my children the right guidelines to fully embrace it, because it's mandatory that they do that, but not, not risk,
Yeah.
getting in trouble.
Yeah.
And the principal, was like, we don't really have any systems in place. And
You're
I
like,
was
you're too
like,
soon.
"Well,
You're like, can you help us develop this?
yeah, just, but I'm not.
Yeah.
So,
No, you're
and
not, but then yeah,
she's
yeah,
lovely.
for them.
Yeah, yeah. And she's lovely, and it's a lovely group of people at the school, but the reality is even our education system is not anywhere close to, we still have an education system that's built on the Industrial Revolution when the Industrial Revolution's in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to your okay, so let me like share with you. So my husband's also an adjunct professor, and he previously would actually tell his students in terms of the papers, like, don't use AI, don't use AI, don't use AI. He's changing that. He's actually switching, totally turning on its head. He's like, you can only use AI. He's like, you absolutely cannot use
Yeah,
any other sources than AI. He's like, that is the only thing you can use. He's like, but this is the thing. Like, what he's really trying to get at, I mean, is you need to check your source. Like, you need to use AI, but it still needs to be correct and accurate. So, like, how do you find that
right,
part of
because
it?
it's not
Because
always.
and
Yeah.
also, like, I mean, I recently, or a couple months ago, had learned like the terminology pertaining to AI around hallucinations. Like, AI is biased. AI is only as good as the information that's fed into it. And like the amount of like crazy information that's out there like runs the gamut. So it's like let's see what happens.
Well, and you still want creativity and independent thought, and it's that balance
Independent thought.
of.
Yes.
Right. And so it's that, again, that's what's going to make us unique is our own unique approach, thoughts, to different things. So yeah, it's that balance. But just because the problem is a kid can cheat, that's not a reason to not use AI when the AI is the future of everything. So I think schools need to figure out, universities need to figure out, okay, the problem is we still want to encourage that independent thought. We don't want them to cheat or rely fully on AI. But then that's the school and the university's problem to solve. The answer is not to don't use AI.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
not the
Yeah.
answer.
Don't squash innovation. Yes, absolutely. Don't squash the
Yes,
opportunity for.
right, right, right. How do we embrace it and kind of, figure it out?
Let me ask you this real quick, because I mean, I guess this sidebar segment, whatever we want to call it, and everything. I feel like you have an interesting vantage point in terms of AI for people, and you're like, don't get left behind.
Yeah.
I didn't ask you to plan for this, but like, are there like maybe 3 things that you suggest that people today that like to learn or to start like what should they do today if they haven't adopted AI into their life in some capacity?
Okay, so quick 2-minute AI tutorial for someone who's never done anything at all with AI. other than what might be running behind the scenes in the apps they're doing at work. Everyone's interfaced with AI at this point. They just might not know it. Okay. Going to Starbucks, with the app, they're interacting, we're interacting with AI all the time. AI has been around for decades, 40, 50 years. The AI is not new. It's just mainstream and rapidly progressing in the last 12 months. That's what's new. So the tutorial would be, listen, there's probably 10. First of all, I do posts on AI, career strategy, leadership strategy, business strategy. My goal is to help millions prepare for the future of work. So I'm putting a lot of content out there on this topic. For this specific question, there's probably, I don't know, 10. There's ChatGPT, there's Claude, there's Copilot, which is Microsoft. So ChatGPT is OpenAI, Claude is Anthropic, Gemini is Google, Copilot is Microsoft. All these big companies have AI bots. You just have to choose the one or the ones that work best for you. There's Perplexity. Now China has DeepSeek. France now has Mistral is a company. France has their own. So there's lots of
What do
different
you
AI
use?
platforms. I have decided I love Claude for anything creative writing, and I love ChatGPT honestly for everything else. I feel
Okay.
like everything else is inferior to GPT.
Okay, I love
I
Copilot
still use.
because, and I use the free
Do
version of
you really?
Copilot. Yeah, I love Copilot, and the reason I love
Yeah.
Copilot is that like I think you get updated information without also having to pay for it. So I'm like I'm a Copilot person.
Yeah. Well, and eventually I'm going to do a paid subscription. I'm not quite there yet. I think I need to keep trying different things, but I have found ChatGPT to be the most reliable and the most current, and maybe Copilot's doing a good job of the same. Claude is a little outdated sometimes, but Claude is just feels like a more intimate experience, just a more creative experience. And that's the Anthropic product. So, and there are a couple rules of the road. One, you have to teach Claude or ChatGPT or your bot about you. So you really have to set the stage. Just like you're writing an essay, you have to set the stage. Here's who I am, here's what I do, here's my tone. So I'll just do mine. Okay, so former corporate exec, I'm a solopreneur. I write about the future of work. I am really concerned about this topic. I really want to help educate people on this specific topic. Help me craft some content that would resonate with a professional audience on LinkedIn, where I can give them not only kind of the landscape of what's happening, but give them some real tips about how to kind of challenge themselves in this particular area. I want it to be, brief. I want you to list bullet points. You have to educate the bot on exactly what you want. Here's the best tip of all. You want to say, you can ask me up to 5 or 10 questions. That's one of the best tips, because you're going to leave stuff out that it needs to know. He, she,
Excellent point. Yes.
no. You don't know what it doesn't know to help you have the best output. So you can tell it your tone, who the audience is. You can fill in a lot of blanks, but always say, ask me up to 5 or 10 questions. And they'll be great questions. I met with someone for lunch yesterday, and he said, I'm really thinking about retirement. And I said, okay, you're going to go home tonight. You're going to go into ChatGPT, and you're going to teach ChatGPT about your corporate career, about your family, about your grandchildren, about how long until you want to retire, about the things you love to do, your gifts and the things you're good at, about what you think a beautiful day in the life in retirement would look like. And then you're going to ask ChatGPT to ask you questions to make sure you fill in all the blanks. And then you're going to tell it to give you a timeline, a strategic plan, 5 different, and you have to be specific. If you don't say 5, it'll give you 1, 5 or 10 or 2 specific retirement strategies that I could follow
Yeah.
that really play against my priorities of travel, grandchildren, this. And in an hour, because you want to take the time, right? And you do the back and forth, you can have, 5 different versions of a retirement plan. I really love teaching. How do I monetize what I love in retirement? It really is. It's a coach, it's a therapist, it's a relationship advisor. It's, literally, it's a tutor, a teacher, literally all at your fingertips. It's fascinating. It's
So what I took away
fascinating.
from just like this is ultimately like pick just one. You just pick one AI tool out
Yeah.
there and teach it about yourself and
Yep.
start there. Just start having that conversation. And I completely agree. It's like you don't even have to do anything with that information or anything with like the information you pull out of it, but legitimately even like any so yes, have it learn about you, but also like the searches that you would potentially do in Google, just put them into your Cope AI assistant, whatever it may be, and ask them questions. Just start that dialogue and understand it.
Yeah, and any problem you have in your day. I had like these cracks in my backyard, and because it's been so dry here this winter, and there were kind of cracks, and I was like, oh my God, am I gonna have a sinkhole? Like, what on earth are these cracks? And
Who
I'm a
knows
single
these days?
mom. I'm a single mom, so I don't have someone to look over and say, you figure it out. And so I took it to GPT. It educated me on what it could be, on different resources to diagnose further. And people will say, well, I'll just do that on Google. It's a totally different experience than putting something. It's an interaction, it's a conversation, it's a back and forth. It's not just asking a question and getting a stagnant answer. And so all
Excellent
of a
point.
sudden I'm like, I become an expert on exactly what cracks in the backyard are in a matter of, you know, 60 seconds. So any problem you run into, challenge, any planning you want to do, this should not be reserved for, it's more fun to start with personal stuff because it's easier anyway and less pressure. So start with personal stuff and.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me ask you this. So like, great. People are like starting to operate with AI and everything. People potentially use it as an opportunity to ask questions or have some dialogue around like career transitions or entrepreneurship and maybe even gigs. So I guess my question to you there is, we're talking about the future of work or technology is like a huge part of it, but like career transformations, like let's say somebody today is in a type of role that they're looking to transition out of. Maybe it's a complete departure, maybe it's like adjacent. Like do you have any general tips around like where career transitions, like what that's going to look like in the future, or if it's going, I almost feel like there's something about it that it feels like it's going to be less challenging with technology. I don't know.
I mean, you think about it at work, and the whole point of AI is it should be able to allow you to do your job better and faster. So if you're not using AI, the person in the desk next to you might be. Are they going to excel because they can get more done in a shorter amount of time and the quality of their work is better? Then all of a sudden, the two of you are competing. If there's an opportunity to downsize, obviously the other person will survive and you will not. So it doesn't really matter what field. I mean, there are robots that are going to be capable of doing surgeries. So even the most affluent professions, whether you're a surgeon or an attorney, no one can turn a blind eye to leveraging this to make them better in their field, because those that don't will be left behind. The jobs that are most secure and the fields that are most secure in the future are ones that really require, like I said, relationships. So you think about childcare. You're not going to leave your child with a robot, right? So that's just a really easy example of, yet at least. So that's a really good example of a very clear version of where the relationship, the human to human contact is so critical that no one would ever step away from that at this stage of where we are. So think about that. And then the corporate environment. What can I do that a bot cannot do? And then really play on those strengths. I think also people need to go to their trade organizations within their fields. If you're an attorney, there are plenty of trade organizations that should be, coaching on AI, talking about AI, having conferences about this topic. How is the field going to change? So again, if you're reading books, listening to podcasts, you've got to lean into the conversation
Mhm.
and zero in on what conversation is happening in marketing specifically. How is AI impacting marketing jobs in the future of marketing? For those people that are leaning in and engaging in the conversation and making some changes and adjustments to their career strategy, those are the ones that will navigate this, at least for the rest of their work life, just fine.
Kathy, so we're kind of getting, getting to time. I'd like to take this as an opportunity right now to like pause for a second. Would Is there anything specifically that you would like to discuss?
I think, no, I think we covered, I mean, I could ask 1,000 things, but I think, or suggest 1,000 things, but no, I think we covered some good stuff. I think,
Yeah.
my mission honestly is to help people. It's not about me trying to monetize a business. Do I hope that will happen organically? Absolutely. But For me, I'm really just here trying to help as many people as possible.
Actually, here, let's talk about this. LinkedIn. I think like, we're talking about specifically careers, like there's an AI component as well, but like what's your thought just generally on like LinkedIn and potentially the power of LinkedIn for someone's career transitions or just generally like personal branding in some capacity. Like who are you? You're not just a resume at the end of the day.
No, and honestly, I just want to shake people. People have to get out of the mindset that they are happy where they are, so that means they don't need to work on their career. I get it. I did it. When you're in a company, you're head down, you're thinking about that company and that work at that desk, whether it's a virtual desk or an in-person desk. And you're really, I've said this on another podcast, you're selfless, you're not selfish. People have got to learn to be selfish, and they need to be selfish proactively. I met with a future of work voice who just put a book out called Rethinking Work, Rashad, and he said you want to be ready to leave 5 minutes to midnight. Don't wait till midnight when you've been laid off or you're unhappy at the job or your job is at risk. It's too late. You need to, at 5 minutes to midnight, start thinking about, even if you're happy, okay, what's my next chapter? What's my next step? Am I networking? Am I building my relationships? So that's why LinkedIn is so important, because your personal brand has to exist beyond the company that you're working for at this moment. LinkedIn is where I've been, where I am, and where I want to go. All three of those stages should be represented on your LinkedIn profile in some manner. And just
I
because
love that.
you're reflecting on where you want to go, that is not being disloyal to your current employer. There are ways to celebrate your current employer on LinkedIn, but still make sure you're positioning yourself as a full person. You are not just this job, this title, this one moment in time. You're a full person who has
Yeah.
been places. Even if you're early in your career and you've graduated school, you have been places, you've done things, you need to tell that story and where you are right now, and also project where you want to go. So, oceanfront real estate, the banner, oceanfront real estate, the tagline underneath your name. That tagline really should be the where I've been, where I am, where I want to go tagline. And the about section, your photo, what your photo represents about you. And then the obvious thing, which I'm trying to encourage people to do now also, is include something futuristic in your profile. Whatever interaction you have with AI,
Yeah.
prove that
Oh,
you're a
yes, yes, yes.
forward-looking
Yep.
because if you're a forward-looking person who that's going to be someone a company can train easily, reskill easily. They know that they're bringing someone on board who's going to be agile. Agility is maybe the number one thing that you need to have in the next generation of work. So personal branding is huge. My last point on personal branding is, you and I spoke about this a couple of times throughout the conversation. You need to be able to build a career outside of your job. You need to have a diverse career strategy. You need to be able to monetize your gifts. You need to be able to earn income outside of a corporate job. And that is 100% about building your personal brand and building a network and engaging with thought leaders in spaces that you're really interested in on LinkedIn, and really starting to build something that could be something or will be something beyond your 9 to 5.
I also, to add to this, one of the things I found is that I mean LinkedIn just as a resource is, I think, phenomenal, and I think that it's completely underutilized. To the business owner or to leadership, I would like to implore them to really evangelize and encourage people to actually be posting about what they're doing. Like ultimately you have this opportunity to have this army of experts talking about how awesome whatever they did within the context of your company, which isn't like a press release, because press releases are really boring. But it's like I think that there's been like consistently there's been like this like stronghold on like whatever the narrative, whatever the messaging structure is, that I don't think actually behooves any organization. And let people encourage people to build their brand. I think at that same time that they're building their own brand, they are at the same time actually building awareness and authority around like the company that they're working at. Because say you have, Maggie over here, she is an awesome product owner. I mean, without giving out, without giving away too many secrets or anything like that, but talks about like what she's been working on for, XYZ company or whatever, it's like she's building authority in her space. Like people then are thinking about your brand while they're reading her content and they're interested in it. And I think that there's a little bit of, thus far, I think it's been a little hush hush. Hey, you don't like, talk about some of these things. And I think that like we need to change that. We need to be talking about it.
Yeah, I think companies are selfish. I think they prohibit people from doing these types of things because they don't want it to reflect in any way negatively on the company. They don't have any control over people's, thought leadership outside of the business. And so there are some thought leaders who have to always have a caveat that says, this does not reflect the opinion of my employer.
Yes.
And I think people just need to not be afraid. They need to approach it as gracefully as they can. They do need to be transparent. You don't want to jeopardize your job, but they need to find a way to have conversations with people inside the organization to celebrate their full selves that exist both within and outside of the organization. And you do have to be a good salesperson, to your point. You have to sell all the reasons why it benefits the company and gives the company free PR,
Free.
free attention, free,
You're like, let me
and
say that
that
again.
it's
Free.
also a tool, free, and it's also a tool for attracting talent.
Yes.
If you are promoting the business and you're attracting an audience that really responds to thought leadership, especially the next generation of workers, then this is all free marketing.
But let's also talk about, wait, real quick though, but I just want to, but like workers are also consumers. So it's like, I mean, these people aren't like, it's, I mean, to like silo it and everything, it's like a worker also consumes. So let's say, whatever your organization is, it's like these people are also like consumers of your products, whatever it may be. So it's like, it's not just one thing.
Yeah. No, and it's a delicate dance. It's like the AI with school. We don't really have policies yet. The companies are the same way. We don't really have, policies yet about how to manage this. So they kind of discourage it. But people, going back to that, the person is the center of the universe. The individual is the center of the universe. That's part of being the center of the universe is they can't get dissuaded or discouraged or scared away from building this. They have to do what's best for them. My mom taught me, and it stayed with me my whole life. No one is going to take care of you but you. Your employer is not going to take care of you. They're telling you not to do something to benefit yourself, to diversify the risk of your career with all this uncertainty in the future. They're asking for blind loyalty. It's unacceptable. Need to catch up and put in the program so that they can celebrate thought leadership and reward people, in fact, who are taking their own personal time in a lot of cases to build these platforms and, at the same time, build up the organization that they work for. It's really, things have to change inside companies so that this is a celebration, not something that scares people. And side hustles is the same way, by the way. People should not be disciplined for having a side hustle. I get it. You need to put in the hours that are required for the job, and you need to understand what success is in the job and what the expectations are, which often does not happen. That discussion around expectations doesn't happen. But, the employee needs the expectations of the job, what's required, and then what they do on their side time is none of the company's business as long as it doesn't, undermine the company's reputation.
And you know what? I think it comes down to like also hiring correctly, but I also like, unless you're actually working like at a widget factory making the widget and everything, I think this element of time and putting in time, like I struggle with that. I'm not saying that you don't need to put in time, and I think that time can also be abused. So like taking that into consideration, I do like to think of at least the role of anybody within an organization about like impact and results as opposed to like button seat type. But like I think about it very differently. It's like, hey, if you if you're able to create something that like goes viral and everything and it leads to X amount of dollars in sales and everything, take the rest of the week off. You know what I mean? It's like you like the amount of value that you've ultimately brought to the organization. And also, I mean, also like with like these gigs and side hustles and everything, I also think that there's an opportunity that like these skill sets further than enhance like that person's ability to execute on behalf of whatever the organization is. So it's like uh, yeah, I don't know. Things are different. Things are weird nowadays, but it's like hopefully if people are thinking a little bit more broadly, it's
I
like you
hope
see
that
how it actually
changes.
helps. Yeah. Yeah. Kathy, how
Yep.
can people
Yep.
find you?
I
Where
hope
do
it
you
changes.
suggest they kind of follow you? Because I feel like you've got a lot of good things to say, and I want to make sure people get you.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you. Yeah, so I spend a lot of my time on LinkedIn. I mean, I'm speaking to the professional community, and so obviously that's the best place to interact with the professional community. So it's Kathleen Zapula, MBA on LinkedIn. I post daily 2 or 3 times a day and have a weekly newsletter called Tomorrow is Today, which is just reflecting the fact that the future is pounding on the door. It's already here. So that weekly newsletter covers lots of different topics. This week is about the disappearance of the middle management layer in corporate and what people can do about it if they feel like they're at risk. I'm also on Instagram, but just starting on Instagram. So it's CZ Future of Work is the Instagram handle, and looking to build that out because I think professionals are so kind of focused on LinkedIn, and there's a whole community out there that does not spend as much time on LinkedIn, even if they are in a professional job. And so I'm trying to kind of expand my message out to a larger audience through Instagram.
I'll be in touch. I got a lot out of this conversation, so thank you so much.